Hi, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us this late in the day. I hope you've all had your 3 p.m. coffee. And if not, these guys are all experts in engagement, so they better engage you. Welcome to Football Connected, where we are going to discuss fan engagement in the global game with some leading football executives who I'm going to ask to introduce themselves. And they are going to tell you a little bit about what fan engagement means to them. So we'll start here with Sabrina.
Hi, everyone. Sabrina Carrozza. I launched my PR agency almost 15 years ago, representing some of the biggest brands in global football, including Bayern Munich, helping them open and establish an office in the New York metropolitan area, FC Barcelona for the last 10 years, La Liga, Serie A. I teach in the Global Sports Program at New York University, and I'm a part of the Global Sports Program at Harvard University. For me, fan engagement is all about creating a connection with people that brings them closer to your brand, to your club, and help them understand what you're about while also finding out what they're about so that you can build a bridge. And that bridge can then be used to monetize the connection because, of course, we're in the sports business, which means you also have to make money. So for me, that kind of wraps up fan engagement.
Lovely. I'm Leo. I'm a co-founder of Fanzo, which we started 15 years ago, which is all about bringing fans together to create unforgettable sporting memories in the best locations around the world, pubs, bars, fan zones. When I think about fan engagement, I think, like, what is it to be a fan? You know, what is it? Why do we get so passionate about this stuff? And I think it's about the sense of belonging. So if I can challenge everyone in the room to just take a small moment and think about what your favorite memory is as a sports fan. I'm going to take a wild punt here and guarantee that no one in this room is thinking about a moment they were on their own, sitting on the sofa with no one else around them. Why? Because sport in isolation is pretty meaningless. You know, sport is a vehicle via which we can share these passionate moments with people. Not always the best moments. I'm a France football fan. I remember 2006 final Zidane Nati Materazzi very well, and it was a dark moment. But I remember exactly who I was with, even though I was a young kid. So when I think about fan engagement, it's about how do we facilitate those moments? How do we create these moments where people can share and create unforgettable sporting memories, and usually go from being a soccer flirt or a sport flirt to being a proper fan?
Well, I think Laura wants me to introduce myself because my name is a bit complicated. It's a Spanish name. It's Iñigo Bonilla. I am client partner senior at Sportian. Sportian is a joint venture between Globan, that is a global tech unicorn, and La Liga. We've been in the industry for a while, delivering multiple projects from La Liga, Lega, Serie A, MotoGP, Wimbledon, and the likes. And for me, I would describe fan engagement in 3 words. The first one is community. The second one is probably about passion. This is aligned with Leo. Is the passion, the feeling that about sports. And the third one is probably hyper-personalization. We will talk about it later on, but I think nowadays, in order to achieve this kind of fan engagement, you need to tailor the content based on the fan needs.
Hello, my name is Tom. I'm the general manager from OneFootball. OneFootball is the biggest football platform in the world. Fan engagement basically means everything to us because it's the core of our business model. We recently changed our North Star metrics from monthly active users to the time spent per users, which basically means that the 300 colleagues of mine are driving all their efforts towards increasing time spent per user on OneFootball. Just to give you an idea of dimensions, when we talk about fan engagement, we have 200 million monthly active users across platform, across the globe. These 200 million people and the most engaged ones spend on a monthly basis 208 minutes on OneFootball, which is, I did the math before, 3.5 hours with OneFootball per month. We see different kind of engagement levels per countries. The craziest, most engaged users are the ones in Brazil. They have, on average, 62 sessions per month on OneFootball. Second most engaged users are the Italians with 59 sessions. Germans, I'm from Germany, they're a bit more conservative. Don't know why. And we see that with the latest partnership which we started with the MLS on a global basis, we see a significant increase even in the US from US users, where we increased time sessions or per month from 44 to 48, just to give you an idea of how we think about fan engagement.
I'm going to go off book really early. I probably should have warned these guys that I was going to do this from time to time, but Leo, you talked about your own personal connection in that moment. What was yours? Go down the panel and tell me what was your moment that made you fall in love, or go from a soccer flirt to what was the language you used?
Soccer fan.
Soccer fan. There you go.
Well, the funny thing is about me, I actually was not a sports fan when I started working in sport. I worked in technology for a decade before ever even being offered an opportunity to work in sport with Bayern Munich, of all teams. 7 of their players had just won the World Cup in summer of 2014, and Bayern opened an office in New York, and I was tasked with helping them to expand and launch in this market. And I knew nothing about Bayern. Surprisingly, I know you're from Germany. You're probably shocked at that, but I'm an American girl, grew up in New York, knew nothing about Bayern, but through the experience of working with them and launching them and watching them on the pitch live, that live experience for me is where I went from, a business executive representing Bayern to a huge fan. And even to this day, and even after I left Bayern to go to Barcelona, I still always followed the team. And how lucky for me that now Lewandowski is at Barcelona. There wasn't one particular moment, just being a part of their live experience was really compelling for me. But I do have that moment with Barcelona. So this was during a Champions League match. I was in Camp Nou, and Barcelona, in the very last few minutes, Neymar kicked PSG out of the Champions League, and that was really exciting for me. So, and to see 100,000 fans screaming, I can't tell you what they were screaming, because it was a very bad word, but they were screaming it to the top of their lungs. 100,000 people were going crazy in the stadium. And I said, wow, this is what I was missing from my life. I need this. And just, it ingrained me even more in football. And I understood why it's so important to connect to that emotion and that passion. That's where fandom is born, and that's where it lives.
Well, in my case, as I said, I'm from Spain, so I'm lucky enough to being able to see a lot of different idols winning a lot of tournaments. So one of them is obviously Rafa Nadal. I was a kid and I watched Rafa winning year after year Roland Garros, and that sparked me, like, I really need to work in this industry. And then obviously I'm a huge football fan. I've been following Real Madrid since I'm a kid. I know your feeling about winning. I know your feeling about winning in the last minute. So I've been in the Bernabeu Stadium so many times, everyone watching. What time is it? Okay, it's 90 minutes. We just have 3 minutes left, and suddenly everyone scores in the last minute. So that sparked me as well, that kind of feeling that I really need to work in this industry, and I'm really passionate about my work because I really love what I'm doing.
Yeah, I had a few different ones. Some of them are connected to more business moments, some are private. I remember 1990. Germany won the World Cup. I remember that my father fell asleep while my grandfather was very excited. I have a few other ones privately. I had my first Germany under-16 national team. I only made 1.5, and then my career in football was over. But this was a very special moment. There was another one, which is the World Cup 2014. I think we will talk about World Cups in this panel as well. But there was a World Cup 2014 where there was a match. I don't know if we have Brazilians here in the room. I know at least one Brazilian in the room, two. So there was a match semi-final. I don't repeat the result and stuff, but I know this was very special for us because in the match afterwards, in case we have Argentinians here in the room, we have won this World Cup, which was one of the very unique, special moments in my life. And actually, for One Football, it was very special because as a company from Germany, Germany was always the biggest country in terms of active users. And during the World Cup in Brazil, since then, Brazil is our biggest country by far with roughly a little bit more than 30 million monthly active users in Brazil, which makes this, for us, the biggest country in terms of users. So these are memorable moments for myself.
France?
Oh, yeah, so
Losing.
my actual favorite moment
Yeah.
was, it was the quarterfinal in 2018 against Argentina. I was in a big beer garden in London watching it with a bunch of French friends, and we went 2-0 down to a Messi goal. And I was like, oh my God, we're going to get knocked out, and this is just too depressing. It was getting really hot. And then Pavard, who is a right back, who's never really hit a ball properly.
Bayern Munich player, by the way.
Bayern Munich player, absolutely. Had no right to hit the ball and scored the goal of the tournament. And it was an out-of-body experience. There was a lot of people and limbs and, yeah.
On this panel, we have a few members that are based in Europe, and we have Sabrina here based in the US, in New York. I'd love to understand from your perspective, starting with you, Sabrina, about what are some of the unique challenges and opportunities of fan engagement in North America, and then I would love to get your guys' perspective about what you see as the differences between North America and Europe. Do you want to start?
So this is probably the bane of my existence for the last 10 years in trying to help European football clubs and leagues understand the best way to engage with American audiences, because many of the executives that I work with are brilliant and they understand their home markets, they understand their football clubs, but they don't yet understand or are willing to really understand what it takes to succeed in America, because the demographic here, the market here is quite different. We're used to, as Americans, consuming sport as an entertainment experience, as a lifestyle experience. You go on to any NFL channels, the players rule, so players are always out, center, front and center, fans are following players first. I think that's the same in Europe. But what the players and the league and the teams do here in American sports is they're talking about their sneakers, they're talking about the music they listen to, they are hanging out with their pals on the weekends, they're taking vacations and showcasing that. They're a little outlandish, they're very entertaining. And, American fans require that in order to really create an experience, that fandom experience that's similar to what they're used to here. And in Europe, and many of the teams in the leagues that I've supported when they first open offices here, they are a little, excuse me, gentlemen, stiff. And, it's very focused on what's happening on the pitch and, just talking about how the game is going, and, who scored a goal, who didn't score a goal. And that's not going to capture a young, and by the way, very diverse audience here in America. So that is what the biggest challenge is. Secondly, it's a very crowded sports and entertainment landscape. In Europe, any of the countries that you go to, the number one sport is their football. And in America, you have NFL, NBA, MLB, NHL, MLS, NWSL, not to mention a bunch of new women's leagues getting started. And then you have your international football clubs. So you really have to find your niche and exploit that fully in order to start at your base of where you have the most promise to grow and then expand from there. Because America is a huge market, as everybody knows. That's why people come here. But pick your poison and really hone in on that, develop that audience, and then expand from there with an entertainment focus.
If you haven't seen Sabrina's shoes yet, I highly recommend checking them out after this panel.
Don't look too closely, you might get blinded by the light.
Sabrina, it's such a good point, and I had the pleasure of being in a Knicks game last week, and just really reminded me what sport is and what fandom is in the US, and it's just completely different, right? It's about the showbiz, it's about the experience, it's about who's the celebrities courtside and all this stuff, and it's like so opposed to what football. So football and soccer are kind of very different, especially from a kind of fandom perspective. It reminds me of a project we did a decade ago for the NFL when they were growing in Europe, and it's a brand that is totally dominant in the US, and then they come to Europe and they become a challenger brand, and it's like, how do we do this? And we were helping them leverage the network of bars, and if you can get thousands of bars around the country creating watch parties, they become your evangelists, they become a kind of marketing node. And it struck me that about 6 weeks ago, the Premier League did an event in Chicago where about 20,000 fans showed up, and at 6:30 a.m. to watch Premier League football. And you look across the crowd and you had a Liverpool jersey, you had a Chelsea jersey, you had an Everton jersey, you had an Arsenal jersey, and they were all hugging, and you're like, well, looks nothing like what you would see in the UK around Premier League fixtures. And I think that's really, you've got to understand that when coming to this market, and you've got to leverage it and not try and create the UK experience for the Premier League in the US. That's just not going to work, I think.
I think the US means as well opportunities more than challenges because the market is way more mature in terms of digital transformation than other markets in Europe. So everyone is, most of the clubs, most of the leagues are eager to implement the latest technology within their organizations because the fans are core of their business. So they really understand that the fans need to be at the center and they need to provide the fans unforgettable experiences. They need to provide the fans as well casual games. They need to engage with the sponsors need to engage with the fans. So I think this kind of loop is very well established in the US. And another thing is that I think in the North American market, they are allocating more resources to fan engagement and these kind of activations rather than allocating all the resources just to what is happening on the pitch. And in Europe, to Sabrina's point, probably most of the clubs are allocating more resources to the performance. Obviously, in the US it's also important, the performance, but in Europe, probably 80% or 75% is going to performance rather than implementing new tools and new platforms to engage with the fan community. I think they are changing the mind as well, but they are a long way.
I think you ask for opportunities and challenges, and as someone from Germany, usually we would look at the challenges first and then explore slowly the opportunities, but we are here in the country of opportunities. So I think for us it's a huge, if not the biggest opportunities at OneFootball. We have defined two strategic markets. One is US, the other one is the Middle East. It's not an accident that in both countries are connected to an upcoming World Cup, although the other country is not officially announced, but I think it's relatively saved. I think the opportunity and why this is such a big opportunity is clear. Women's football is more established than everywhere else. There is two big major landmark events coming up with the Club World Cup next year and the World Cup. That is a huge opportunity for us. As said, in 2014, the World Cup was the driver for a change in our biggest market. If that would be the same thing in US, then that would be quite interesting for us. I'm responsible for the commercial side of the business, and the US is still the highest CPM market, which means advertisers are spending the highest price in the US, so that would be commercially driven. I hope it's okay to say that, a very interesting opportunity for us. Where there is a challenge is that we, is a content side, because the very loyal users we already have in that market are probably die-hard football fans. They follow Club Americas, Manchester City, and the MLS, and they have a very deep knowledge about football. What we see is when we try to convert people who are interested in football to fans in that regions, then we need to make sure that we educate, because football is so special, because you talk about rivalry. You mentioned the moment from Zidane where he kicked the other person. There's so much special knowledge, hand of God from Maradona. And without that knowledge and without that understanding why football is so special around the world, it is hard to convert someone from an interested person to a real fan. And that is where we see a balancing act between serving our very loyal fans based on that knowledge versus making sure that the new ones who are OneFootball users are getting into this mode and understanding let's say the specialties about football.
There's such an interesting point there around those stories and around the heritage that is soccer and football in Europe, and those stories haven't quite necessarily landed. And I think there's a point here about how do you get those shared with you? Is it with the OneFootball? Is it because you're sitting next to a total passionate football fan and you're a football flirt, soccer flirt, sorry, and football
flirt works too. You're okay with
right.
that.
And then they're telling you about the hand of God, or they're telling you about the fact that those two players actually hate each other because one of them plays for Real Madrid and one of them plays for Barcelona during the World Cup. And I think there's an incredibly big opportunity, and you were referencing the Football World Cup. You're going to have a lot of soccer flirts engaging with soccer in that period, and it's how we use those stories and how we use the event to create a lot of soccer fans.
And I just wanted to jump in to say, I've been dancing around what actually one of the biggest problems is. It's really holding the sport back, which is the games that are played here on US soil are just friendly matches. And fans, real fans, they can't get excited about something that doesn't matter in the, in the sporting calendar. And so, I talked about how I transitioned from a flirt to a fan, and it was in a live experience. And all of the digital experiences that we can provide, all the storytelling, all the content creation, it falls a little flat when you don't first have that passion. And that passion is really developed in live experiences. So I think there has to be this understanding from the federations and the leagues that they have to find a moment to bring, just as the NFL does, just as the NBA does in expanding into global markets. They have to figure that piece out of how are they going to bring matches that matter to US soil, because that is, for me, actually the #1 missing piece.
The other question, though, is does it have to be in match? Like, how do you create that experience? And maybe you can speak to this, Leo, where you feel like you're part of it without actually being there, because there's a massive audience outside of those stadiums, correct?
Right, and I think that is the exact point. That's where we go from a flirt to a fan, is when we have those incredibly heightened emotions and those special moments. 99% of Manchester City fans will never go to the Etihad. So how are you creating these offline social experiences where you're sharing that passion and watching what they did in Chicago for the Premier League and etc.? And I agree, one way of doing that is bringing foreign games and making them part of the league and getting those matches done. And it's a model that works. But there's also another model, which is creating a stadium that's 100 times bigger. This is the accumulation of all the FIFA fan festivals, the bars, the pubs, the fan zones, and turning that into a place where you are not only engaging those fans, and that's happening, but also understanding who they are and collecting that data. And because they're your future evangelists, they're the people who are going to grow your sport organically. So you need to engage them, understand them, collect their data, and use these guys to really drive it forward.
And I think aligned with that strategy is providing them with the right tools and make them feel part of the game as well. So one of the tools that we have developed, for example, is called fan voting system. So we are allowing the fans worldwide to vote for their favorite player during the game. So at the end of the game, they will see, like, for example, if we are talking about La Liga, they will see Bellingham is the first one, second one is Vinicius, and third one could be Lo Celso from Betis Football Club. Okay, so at the end of the day, you are making them part of this conversation. They feel that they are contributing somehow to the league as well. And then other organizations are providing them with stats in real time in order to achieve a better engagement with them. They are providing them like highlights. There are multiple companies that are cutting some videos and providing them with just the goal. So there are multiple ways of engaging with the fans and providing them better experiences.
I think our claim is actually no one gets you closer. And I'll give you an example of how we make sure that fans who are not in the stadium are engaged with the live match. We, together with Comobol, we created a new right. We actually invented a new rights category by coming up with near live rights. Right? I think it didn't exist 2-3 years ago. We can be proud to be the co-creator of that rights category. What we do is, in the moment there's a goal happening, we send a push notification. 9 out of 10 users allow us to send them push notification. That means we have access to every fan pocket in their pocket, because they have the phone in their pocket. In the moment the goal happens, we send a push notification to the fan which is interested, because it's a Flamengo fan or River Plate. We target this fan and we say a goal happened. If this person is not in the stadium and not even watching it, which rights holders realize that it more and more happens, because there's a lot of a competition for 16, 17, 18-year-old fans. We send a push notification and they can see this goal in the moment this goal happens, or a few seconds later on OneFootball.
We'd be remiss if we didn't talk about the 2026 World Cup. You three all mentioned World Cups as reasons that you fell in love with this game. How do clubs and leagues in North America take advantage of this opportunity that's ahead? not only while the World Cup is happening and in the lead up, but afterwards?
Yeah, because you looked at me, I'm supposed to be the club expert here. Difficult question actually, because I think what we know for sure is that at least 32 of the clubs are having their summer break season in the US because they play the Club World Cup. I think that's a massive change. Usually during World Cups, the clubs go on vacation and take a breath and prepare the next season. But what we see when we talk to even the clubs, we have 135 clubs around the world are in partnership with OneFootball. 12 of them are shareholders, such as Real Madrid, Barcelona, Bayern Munich, Man City, Liverpool, and the likes are having a little stake in OneFootball. So we have regular conversations with them. So even clubs who are not participating in the Club World Cup are planning to have their summer, their pre-season journeys rather towards the US than what they usually do Asia. So I think they want to, surf the wave and get a share from that bigger cake.
And I think they will use as well their own players to be like kind of brand ambassadors. So at the end of the day, the World Cup is going to happen just during 30 days or 35 days. And then the players will be brand ambassadors, so they will be representing their clubs afterwards. So if they build this kind of fan community and I would say the North American market fall in love with Bellingham or with Lamine Yamal, then they will start following Real Madrid or Barcelona or PSG and the likes.
I think soccer needs to work a little bit better together. After the World Cup, what has the Premier League done? What's the La Liga done? What's Champions League done to understand who's become a big soccer fan? What's the environment you're leaving behind? Understand that audience, leverage them, because they are your biggest earned media, and make sure that there are places you can watch and enjoy and share your passion for soccer.
I think those clubs that invest in the US market will win, because when the tide rises with the World Cup in 2 years, I don't think it's going to come back down to the levels that we've seen in the past, where there's this really high, and then right after the World Cup it comes down. The growth of soccer or football in America has been astronomical over the last 10 years. I've been living it and breathing it, working for these football clubs, and I've seen a big change in the way that young people, and I say more diverse people, but really everywhere. I could be up in the Adirondacks, I could be in Canada, I could be anywhere across the United States, and I see young kids wearing football kits who don't necessarily know anything about the club beyond what they understand from FIFA, from EA Sports, from gaming. And, there's a big opportunity that everyone is missing. And I've been shouting this from the rooftops for 10 years and I think Wrexham FC is a great example of that. I think Drive to Survive is a great example. Storytelling and content creation and getting your message out there to people in compelling ways. Don't tell them about your club. Show them. Show them why they should care by elevating players, but not talking about the game, talking about the struggles that players have gone through, talking about their home lives, what they do on the weekends, what happens in the locker room. And we see over and over and over again, these documentaries perform so well. And it's not just that the content performs well, but then it's driving growth of the league, of the team. And so that storytelling piece is crucial, especially without live experiences, to creating an emotional connection with young fans who want to learn more, but we're not giving them enough. And then secondly, again, creating initiatives in this market, like Premier League is doing a really great job. I mean, obviously they have a lot of resources to work with, and so they can put on that event in Chicago, and they're going to be doing a road show the entire season. That's going to get them even further ahead than the other leagues. And I always question, what is the DFL doing? La Liga is doing a great job too, but Serie A is now in the US market. What are they doing to connect with fans? And there just isn't enough resources being put behind compelling storytelling and then creating experiences for fans, investing in that lifestyle experience, doing cross collaborations with influencers across the different categories, lifestyle categories that matter to young fans. Because I can tell you, based on experience, when Barcelona does a post with Rosalia or Barcelona does a post with Drake, that captures the attention of young fans, and young fans start to share that out in their network because it speaks to them. Music speaks to them, fashion speaks to them. And what are you doing in those categories here in America where it's crucial that you do that?
Quick point on that Wrexham bit. Wrexham is a really good example of why Europeans don't really understand how soccer is going to grow in the US. It's not about performance, it's about the story. And that's how you're going to have to, that's what you've got to utilize to grow the sport across.
Ultimately, nothing is sexier than sports, right, to sports fans right now than feeling like you're behind the scenes and you're with the teams, right? Yeah, absolutely. Who do you want telling those stories? I mean, you touched on it a little bit here, but influencers,
Players.
Yeah.
Players and influencers. So if you're talking about existing fans, it's going to be players. If you're talking about finding new fans and bringing them into your club and league to develop your audience, that's why everyone opens an office here, is to reach new fans. To do that, you have to do things differently. If you're only doing things the way that you do them to engage your existing fans, you're not going to grow. You want to reach new fans? Tap into fashion. There was, hopefully some of you are aware of this, so there was a story going around a couple of weeks ago about how this women's sports platform called Together, which was launched by NWSL player or former NWSL player Alex Morgan, among others, and they focus on telling stories around women's sport. They had developed this really simple black t-shirt that says, "Everybody loves women's sports." That t-shirt sold $3 million in 7 months. And it was really, a novel idea. And then there were all these stories coming out about how it's a $4 billion market. Women's sports merchandise is a $4 billion market. And why are teams and leagues not exploiting that to create lifestyle merchandise that you can sell, even if it's just, 1 or 2 items that you could put out to drive revenue, to drive new sales for American fans, for female fans who are very much interested in fashion and sport. So there are many opportunities that are really just right there ready for the taking if you're willing to go and do them.
To add to that, many women decide the household budget. So you know where you're spending, women are deciding where people are spending their money.
And by the way, half of sports fans today, whether that's for men's sports or for women's sports, obviously it's higher for women's sports, but half of all sports fans today are women. And this idea that, women are one-dimensional fans and they don't have their own needs and wants and expectations as sports fans is really, there's a lot of money being left on the table by not addressing female sport fans and their unique interests and how they could really drive a lot of new revenue opportunities for clubs and leagues that are looking to expand here in the US market.
No, I would say pretty much the same. In the case of F1, for example, I've seen recently that McLaren Racing signed a partnership with Levi's, and they are selling all over the world clothes like branded by McLaren, but Levi's is the one that is selling this kind of merchandising. In Italy, one of the latest trends is that most of the clubs are using like vintage jerseys in order to reach out new audiences and to start working on that kind of fashion trend. I've been working with NBPA, with the National Basketball Players Association, and for example, they've been supporting the players, organizing a kind of workshop in Milano to show them how they can maximize the revenue streams working on with fashion brands and how they can start engaging in a different manner with the younger generation. So I think this is pretty much a trend, and we will see many more following that direction.
If we're not getting data, capturing data as it relates to these, then ultimately, what's the point? So I'm wondering, technology has played such a significant role in fan engagement today. How are you capturing data? What are you looking at? What data points are you looking at to sort of ensure that we're going in the right direction?
I think for us, data is, if you talk to our shareholders and investors, this is the topic which is bigger than anything else. From a strategic point of view, at OneFootball, from the 200 million monthly active users, we have at the moment 28 million of these users are what we call locked-in users. Locked-in means when they download the app, they don't skip the onboarding process with login, but they log in with either the email address or with a Facebook log or whatsoever. That means from these users we know exactly name, surname, email address, and so on and so on. And what we then also know is from the behavior of these users is what are they interested in. We just launched 2 weeks ago what we call like the One Football Club, which is a loyalty program where we incentivize users to use the app more and to share more data, not only personal data, but also more data on what is their interest in football. And they get some sort of incentive by getting points. The points they get, they can turn into tickets at a later stage. And that is very promising. We see 10 times more, 10x more engagement from these users who are part of the loyalty program, which is crazy. And you only get a number or a certain level. They don't even know what exactly they get for that. But I think that's psychologically what works with Nike app when you want to get to a new orange level because you ran 10,000 kilometers or something. So it's an absolutely crucial point. Our ambition is that in the verticals of football, we have all the relevant data. Are you a Nike or an Adidas fan? What type of club are you following? Are you someone who betting or not betting? What is your preference in terms of the zone versus Sky, pay-per-view versus season pass, and so on and so on. We step by step collecting all of this data, first and foremost to make our product better, right? So what our ambition is a hyper one-to-one personalized user experience, and to deliver this one-to-one personalized user experience, we need to know what our users are interested in, and that's why data and collecting this data is absolutely key for us.
In our case at Sportian, we've built a customer data platform. We are providing this tool to La Liga and the clubs, but also to Belgium Pro League and their clubs. And what we are doing basically is centralizing all the different sources of data into a single platform, so they can have like a 360 fan view, and then they can start taking the data-driven decisions. They can start building different customer journeys basically based on customer behaviors. They can start integrating all the different sources of data from ticketing, merchandising, and so on. And at the end of the day, this is driving them new revenues, but it's also supporting them to convert casual fans into registered fans.
Yeah, from our end, that audience of social sports fans in out-of-home places is totally untapped. No one's gathering any data about them. You know, when Nielsen go and report figures on how many people watched the World Cup final, how many people in bars, really, it is like there is no data. And so we do a lot of work in that space where we've got 37,000 bars globally. We understand what they show, what they're not showing, the relative performance of La Liga versus Formula One versus MotoGP in different territories, both from a supply perspective within how many people want to show it versus how many people want to watch it, how many people are Googling, you know, best bars, etc. And then we embed a lot of that technology, white label. We did it for the Euros, for UEFA, in their platforms to help them understand that audience and gather data about the fans that are in venues.
The one thing I can say about data, just working for Barcelona in a time when they needed to find a new T-shirt and stadium sponsor, is that the value of data is immense. And clubs and leagues have to figure out how to own their own data. Not to take away from the services that are available, but data is worth a lot of money. Brands pay a lot of money to understand who a club's fans are and how they could best engage them, attract them, and monetize them. And if you don't own your own data, if you allow someone else to own your data, you're going to miss out on tens of millions or more dollars by not having access to your own fan data. So obviously it's very costly to implement these programs, and it takes a lot of time to implement these programs, but absolutely it's worth it to do it, because not only will you be able, as the club or the league, to engage your fans better by understanding who they are and what moves them, but also then when you're working on sponsorship deals, you're going to attract a lot more capital that way.
That's why the clubs are working with us, and a few of them are even shareholders, because to come back to your Barcelona example, when Spotify was on the finish line to close the deal with Barcelona. In the sponsorship packages, and I hope no one from Barcelona is in the room, even if they're a shareholder, don't want to throw them under the bus, but Spotify realized they actually don't have any data because all of the
That's what I was talking about. Yeah, not to throw them under the bus, but
because
yes.
all of their 4 billion fans are on social, and these data belongs to Mr. Zuckerberg, and he don't want to share this data for obvious reasons because he makes a lot of money with that. So that is the reason why the clubs understand that it's a value to work with us and to share their content with us, because in return we are a little bit more flexible than Mr. Zuckerberg in sharing back this data if there is a value exchange between the two partners, which is why all of the major clubs now understand they need to build owned and operated audiences, because the key to their future direct-to-consumer business is owning the fan relationship.
We're technically out of time here, but I'm going to just ask one more of you. How do you balance, we started off the top talking about that human connection, that human piece. We finished here talking about data and how important it is. How do you balance those two to finding and being authentic with your fan community?
For me, it always starts and ends with heart. You're talking to people, you want to engage people, and the way to move people, as we all have talked about, is through the heart. So whether it's the use of data and helping you figure out what people care about, or it's creating those live experiences that do tug at the heartstrings, or telling compelling human interest stories. For me, as a marketer who is helping clubs and leagues to connect with fans, to develop their audiences, it's always about creating an emotional connection, and data helps you do that. Digital strategies, creating virtual experiences, betting and gaming, gamifying everything, that helps you create connections with your fans. And the storytelling, of course, but it all plays a role. The live experiences, the virtual experiences, the data, the back end of it, it should all be pointing to one direction, which is who are these people and how can we connect to their heart? How can we pull them in and make them care about what it is that we're doing and who we're about? But first you have to understand who they are in order to do that and find those connection points. So for me, it's all the same.
I think the main word that you used there was authentic, right? How you bringing a good story here. It reminds me of something we did for the World Cup, FIFA World Cup, 2018 or 14 even. And the premise was light up the FIFA World Cup was Budweiser sponsorship. And so we collected a whole bunch of data on our fans to say, right, tell us who you support. And if you're Mexican, Mexico scored a screamer against Germany. And bam, every one of the Mexican fans got a free Budweiser. And it was like, phone pops up, FIFA gets the data, Budweiser gets the data, but like, that was amazing. Have a free Budweiser, go to the bar in like 5,000 bars in the UK. I'll give my data for that. That's a part of the experience. That's made it better, and it's put Budweiser at the heart of what they wanted, which is to be at the heart of fan euphoria. So you can get data without being a bad guy.
For me, data is just an enabler to provide the fans the experience they are expecting and the content they are expecting, instead of throwing them any kind of content. So it's related to hyper-personalization, as I said before.
I can just second then. A lot of new things, but 2 days ago we launched the first, what we call the marketplace, only in Germany, so it's not, you cannot access this here in the US, but we give clubs and companies like Fanatics a chance to use OneFootball as a distribution channel to sell their shirts, right? And for example, in Germany we have something which is called Oktoberfest. You heard about that.
Heard of it.
You heard about that. And Bayern Munich is doing an Oktoberfest shirt every year. What we know from talking about data, what we know from our fans is there are Bayern Munich fans, they are reading an article about how the players of Bayern Munich acted at the Oktoberfest. In that moment, we can show them the Oktoberfest shirt, and obviously, in the moment where someone is an active Bayern Munich fan reading an article about the Oktoberfest, the chance to convert this person into someone who buys the shirt is 10 times higher than on every advertisement in the world, which is why, as you said, we use data to optimize not only the commercial offers to our users, but also that first and foremost to make the user experience with all the content offering as personalized and as contextual as possible.
Wonderful. Well, I think we could keep going forever, but I think we're all done here. So thank you very much to everybody. Thank you for joining us. And
Thank
we'll see
you,
you soon.
Laura.
Thank you.